even the best national college football show has pointed out how big of a weekend this is for the Big 12. So if you think I'm dramatic and I'm always overselling national impact and perception opportunities for the Big 12 and how much that matters, I will defer to the biggest national college football show out there, which said the same thing before I even had a chance to say it when I was listening to it earlier today. And it all happens this week in the Big 12 with the backdrop of just like everything that makes college football unique and special and great. And that's why I love this weekend in particular. Okay, so realignment has robbed us of a lot of the great things in college football. Rivalries, chief among them. We don't get Kansas, Missouri every year. All right. We don't get Baylor, SMU anymore. They're not Southwest Conference rivals. Iowa State, we'll see. It's only on the books until 2027. Hopefully that doesn't become the next casualty here. But Kansas, Missouri, especially leading the charge here on this. I have such a love and affinity for that game, man. I love it so much. I grew up in Kansas City, so I am very much at ground zero of Kansas, Mizzou fans and like what that rivalry meant. And even in football, man, when they weren't always great teams, there's just so much hatred in that rivalry. And this is why, my tweet got a lot of attention last week when College Game Day chose to go to Michigan, Oklahoma. And I said, man, Kansas, Missouri is really what makes college sports great, not these couple of bloated brands in Michigan and Oklahoma that everybody is going to flock to. Now, kudos to Fox for choosing Iowa State, at least another great rivalry. I don't think there's quite as much hatred baked into it as there is with Kansas, Mizzou, but another great rivalry and two good teams, two good programs. Kudos to them for choosing that and deciding to do that. Because I just think that's so much more about like what makes college football unique and great is the fact that Kansas and Missouri, that thing goes back to the Civil War. That is the Civil War. Jayhawkers were groups in the 1800s that raided pro-slavery communities. They went and just raided towns. And then in Columbia, they started up the Tigers, a militia unit to protect the city from stuff like that happening. That's how far back this goes. They were fighting over slavery, guys. Like, if you think your rivalry is filled with bitter hate, does it go back to the Civil War? I was doing a lot of reading recently about the rivalry, and it's talking about, 1911, the game that supposedly originated homecoming. That's what's credited with originating homecoming at Mizzou KU in 1911. And there were just soldiers that had fought against each other, like standing on the sidelines, glaring at each other during the game. I mean, that's what this goes back to. And it's a game that was the second most played rivalry in college football before it stopped in 2011 because of, you guessed it, the suits at Fox and ESPN and conference realignment, who are pulling everything apart here in college football. So there's like a pride thing in me that this game is back, at least for now. They're going to play 4 times. There's a bit of a break after this year and next. I think it's 2030 and 2031 after that. But we're at least going to get some little dose of it. I mean, there's no reason that this game should not be played every single year. And as much as I hate it, going to Mizzou in 2023 to watch K-State lose on a 60-yard field goal at the gun, that was a great experience in that there was a lot of hatred there. There was a ton of hatred. There was a lot of vitriol. That was a miserable walk back to the car, But that's because those are two schools that are close to each other, have a ton of history, and have similar programs, and they should play each other every year. And it's ridiculous that it doesn't happen. So obviously that game's a part of what is a huge opportunity for the Big 12, but I wanted to underscore like what I also love about this week and the fact that the Big 12 is right in the thick of that. As far as the game goes, does Kansas have what it takes in the trenches to win this game? I think is really my concern. Like, can the Kansas offensive line and the Kansas front seven hold up to win this game? I'll incorporate the front seven because Kansas has real injury issues at linebacker, and that's going to be one of the concerns. Bo Pribula, Penn State transfer at quarterback, rushed for a ton of yards on Central Arkansas last week. That's going to be a real concern. Can Kansas keep up with that with their front seven? I think Mizzou's offensive line is gettable, but then it's, is the Kansas defensive line up to the task? And can they take full advantage of that? So that's where the story of the game will be. I mean, Jalen Daniels, I think, is going to get his. That Kansas offense really looks like it's humming. I do think they will score. They'll score some points. But how much can you limit Bo Pribula And can that Kansas offensive line consistently enough hold up to score enough points? I kind of foresee that being a game where a bunch of points are going to be scored. But it's also, I mean, an insane environment. Like I'm not going to lie. I was sitting here today and I had a little thought in my head, like, should I go? Should I check StubHub? I mean, I'm sure tickets are crazy expensive. I'm sure it's very difficult to get a ticket to that game. But I literally thought, like, I want to go to that. I mean, that atmosphere is going to be so thick with hate. It's crazy. I saw what it was like in Columbia when K-State came to town. It's going to be that times 5 with Kansas there. It's going to be wild. I want to make that drive almost to Columbia to do it. If someone has a free ticket, let me know. I might just do it. But it's the same deal. I mean, I see people talking about the Holy War in the comments. That's my plan right now, is to go check out the Holy War. That is the plan this year. It's because I want to experience things like that. And I just want to emphasize this is a rivalry of that ilk. Okay. So if Kansas can win and you knock off an SEC team that's won 21 games the last few years, that will draw people's attention. And it was on that Kansas-Mizzou video that I mentioned that Josh paid at. Me and 3,999 people watched it. Far fewer than the 67K who cared about Mizzou or Michigan, Oklahoma. And in that video, Josh Pate said, hey, this is a big week for the Big 12. Look at all the matchups that are out there. And he pointed out the same thing I hammered into you guys last week. And I know I took a little bit of heat from some people, making too much of the fact that Auburn beat Baylor, Cincinnati couldn't beat Nebraska, Georgia Tech clipped Colorado. Josh Pate said the same thing. Missed opportunities with those games, listed those games and said, hey, look at what's coming up this week. Huge upset opportunity if Oklahoma State can go push Oregon, right? But you have Baylor, SMU. And then you've got, Arizona State, Mississippi State. That's a game that scares me because you just can't lose that. But major week for the Big 12. Major week for the Big 12. Obviously, Iowa State, Iowa, a part of that as well. And when you're talking about great rivalries, man, yes, there's definitely a lot of hatred. There's kind of a little brother, big brother vibe toward Iowa State, Iowa. But these games, you're not going to find a rivalry that's more like closely contested than this. 11 of the last 13 have been decided by 10 points or less. Road teams won 5 in a row. Matt Campbell, as good as he's been, has never beaten Iowa at home. And this game is at home. So can he get over that curse? And to me, the rivalry, just the point spread, speaks volumes about what this rivalry is with Iowa State and Iowa. If you look at like the quarterbacks, like Rocco Becht is miles ahead of Mark Gronowski, MAC transfer, who threw for a whopping 44 yards against Albany last week after the narrative in the offseason was that Iowa got way better at quarterback. Iowa's going to be without its best running back, Kamari Moulton. Like, where are we getting? If you look at this, like, how is this? Iowa State's at home and they're a 3.5-point favorite, but like, you're silly if you make it much more than that just based on the history of the rivalry. Like, it's going to find some way to be remarkably close and come down to the wire. Low key, big game. Talked about Baylor losing to Auburn ad nauseum last week. Such a rough thing that they got pushed around and Jackson Arnold ran all over them. Baylor's got a rebound, man. Now you play SMU. SMU was pretty central in the Big 12 story last year by being a second team from the ACC that made the college football playoff, and they made it despite the fact that they lost at home to BYU early in the year. The Big 12 is going to get 2 rips at SMU. TCU and Baylor will both play them. Baylor needs to go get this done, man. You need to go win this game, Baylor, for the league and for your season, because Arizona State's coming up in 2 weeks, and Baylor will be staring right down the barrel of 1-3 if they do not get this win against SMU. So it's a major one. It's also another one of those in-state regional rivalries, ties going back to the good old days in the Southwest Conference. So I love all of the pomp and circumstance that's going to surround it. But this has like real implications for it. Go beat a team that made the playoff last year from the ACC. And in a year when the Big 12 didn't get as much respect as it should have in terms of playoff consideration, continue throwing that back in people's faces because SMU's got a lot back. This is, in a lot of ways, the same team, man. Kevin Jennings back at quarterback, dynamic offense, and obviously the fear there is. Baylor's got injury issues. Best D tackle maybe out of the game. The issue is you just got pulverized for 137 yards on the ground by Jackson Arnold. Is the same thing going to happen with Kevin Jennings here in this one? I saw a stat that basically if SMU can run the ball with Kevin Jennings at quarterback, they will win. It was that Kevin Jennings 30 pass attempts or over last year, so more than 30 pass attempts, they were 2-3. Kevin Jennings less than 30 pass attempts, they were 9-0. So you got to make them throw the ball. Baylor's got to make them throw the ball. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple, at least in theory, not in execution. So it's a tough one. I'm not going to lie. I would pick SMU. I'm not feeling great about it, but Baylor needs to show a lot of improvement from week 1 to week 2. We've also, look, I'm not forgetting about Houston Rice. All right. Intra-city rivalry between Houston and Rice. And then, the Oklahoma State, Oregon. I don't know what the path is for Oklahoma State to win the game. I got to be honest, guys. Like, I want to believe, I want to get behind Zane Flores. I want to think that there's some way that they could actually pull that deal off. But, man, they're a 27.5-point dog for a reason. If Haas Heine were there, Haas Haney, I feel like I'm always screwing that up. Haas Haney. If he were there and he weren't injured, I would maybe feel like, all right, like I saw some real sparks from him. Maybe he is like the second coming of like a Johnny Manziel style quarterback, and he's just going to roll. It'll be his coming out party, and Oregon's still getting adjusted to a bunch of new faces and players. I can't talk myself into it with Zane Flores, guys. I mean, they had 1 touchdown after the first 3 drives with him at quarterback last week against supremely overmatched competition. I don't see it, but it's a big opportunity. If you can, how many times do Big 12 teams get a shot to go play at Autzen? Doesn't happen very often. And then the reason I say Arizona State, Mississippi State scares me is not because of like sheer raw talent and ability and skill from Mississippi State that I think could be overwhelming. It's just that if you lose this game, which is it's a night road game in Starkville, okay, that can be a tough environment to play in. Mississippi State's still 1-0. Nobody has checked out on the season there. If you lose that game and you're a top 10-ish team, depending on where you look, top 10, top 12 for Arizona State, and you lose that game to what was the worst SEC team last year, the league will just get crushed. So there's pressure on Arizona State. I don't know if they necessarily feel that individually, but for the league's sake, there is real pressure on Arizona State to go win that game. Kenny Dillingham's already dropped a little bit of ire from SEC folks who he was talking about. They are staying like an hour outside of Starkville because every hotel had a casino or something like that in town. He was taking some heat from folks for that comment, which did kind of make me chuckle. But Mississippi State's probably going to be fired up, man. I guess that's the point. They will probably be fired up. Arizona State -6.5. I mean, that seems like a small line based on what they were last year. Remember, Arizona State 1 play away from beating Texas. This is the last place team in the SEC last season. Not very high hopes. Need to go get the win. And I know ASU built a big lead and then just kind of hung on in this game last year, but they did have like almost 300 yards rushing from Cam Scadaboo last year. 297, that's what it was. 297 yards. Maybe it wasn't rushing, it was total yards, but 297 yards from Cam Scadaboo last year, and they won by 7. Won the game by 7. So, there's reason, at least for me, to be a little concerned. Arizona State, it was like 38-19 against Northern Arizona last week. It was not a Texas Tech, BYU, Kansas type of performance in that game. It was week 1. I'll give them a pass there, but show up this week, man. Need to show up this week. All right, so fun week on tap in the Big 12. I really, 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 really love all that. I love the rivalries. I love that the Big 12 can kind of be at the center of, hey, there's still some cool things happening in college football. Because really, I would spin it to you like this. I feel like the difference between those videos that I just mentioned, Missouri, Kansas, and then the Michigan Oklahoma video and the amount of views there, and the fact that College Game Day chooses Michigan Oklahoma over Kansas Missouri, like that's sort of what we're trading away in college football. Like that's the trade-off now. People want and think that long term more Michigan Oklahoma is going to be a better thing for the sport than more Kansas Missouri. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. You can definitely have your Michigan Oklahoma. Like some of that is good, but diminishing returns over time will happen when the big brands are just only playing big brands, and what you lose is the unique hatred deeply ingrained in people that has 100+ years of history, like Kansas Missouri. So to me, a perfect encapsulation of where we're at going into this weekend. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody who is here.